Assalamu alaikum, my lovely students. Look at what we have here. Today we are going to be talking about Roald Dahl. Do you know who Roald Dahl is? Roald Dahl is a very famous writer, and I'm sure you can see lots of these books. They have been written by Roald Dahl. Can you recognize any of the books that you've read? They look very interesting indeed. Let's talk about Roald Dahl. Then I will talk to you about each story later. So, Roald Dahl. Who was Roald Dahl? Who do you think was Roald Dahl? Anybody got any ideas? Well, Roald Dahl is a very famous, was a very famous writer because he has died. He is no longer alive. Anyway, children all over the world love reading books by Roald Dahl. And I'm sure you can see why. Because they look so exciting and so colourful. I would love to read all of these books by Roald Dahl. His books bring magic and joy to many of the little boys and girls. Look how exciting they are. How very lovely these books look. Very nice indeed. Roald Dahl was born in Wales, in England, on the September 13th, 1916. His parents were from Norway. As a young man, Roald Dahl served in the Royal Air Force as a fighter pilot. Do you know what a fighter pilot is and what a fighter pilot does? Anyone got any ideas? This book here talks about Roald Dahl as a fighter pilot going solo. That's a very, very interesting book about Roald Dahl and his experience as a fighter pilot. If you get a chance, you must read it. Anyway, after his time spent in the force, Roald Dahl wrote many books for children. As you can see, there are lots of them. Can you count and tell me how many there are? I wonder how many you can count. But remember, there are many, many other books. Not just these books, but many, many other books that he wrote. These are just some of the books that he wrote. His most well-known children's book is Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Of course, that's one of my most favourite of all. It talks about chocolate. Indeed. Does anybody in the class like chocolate? Anyone? He also wrote the BFG. That is a very interesting book again. Very, very interesting. He also wrote The Witches. The Witches is also a really good book. And I'm sure you can guess what the book is all about. Of course, it's about witches. He also wrote James and the Giant Peach. Again, a very, very good book. He also wrote Matilda. Oh, one of my most favorite of all. It's about a little girl who loves books. Does anybody in the class like books? Does anybody in the class like reading books? How many of you like reading books? That's great. Most of Roald Dahl's stories are about kind and good children who have to fight against mean adults and monsters. Oh dear, that's not very nice, is it? There we are. His stories show how much he adored children. Roald Dahl died in 1990. He left many heartwarming stories to the world. Now I'm going to talk to you a little bit about each one of the books. I think we can start off with Matilda. Oh, Matilda is one of my very favorite books. It's about a little girl who loves reading. And his parents and school teacher don't really think that's a very good idea. However, I'm not going to spoil the book and tell you the story. I think you should go to the library or go to the bookshop and get yourself a copy of the Matilda. It's a very, very good book. I promise you, you will really enjoy it. Oh, another book by Roald Dahl is The Magic Finger. What do you think this book is about? Do you think this book is about a finger which has magic in it? Or do you think it's about something else? Well, I'm not going to tell you. I think you need to read the book for yourself. Again, it's a very good book. Ah, The Boy. Now, this is a very good book. This is about Roald Dahl's childhood. So if you want to find out about what Roald Dahl was like as a child, I think you must read this book. Very, very interesting book once again. Really good. And I'm sure you will enjoy it. But once again, I am not going to tell you what it's about. I've just told you that it's an autobiography. An autobiography is basically about someone's life. And I'm sure you know whose life this is about. This is about Roald Dahl's life when he was a little boy, just like you. But if you're a little girl, then I'm sure there's lots of interesting things in there for you as well. Remember, Roald Dahl was a very cheeky little boy. And if you want to find out what he was like, I think you must read the book. Again, I love this book. Isios Trot, one of my favorite Roald Dahl books. Oh, I'm sure you know what it's about. It's about a little turtle. But I'm not going to tell you much more about the little turtle. You can find out for yourself by reading the book. Again, this is a very interesting book. Remember, Roald Dahl used to love talking about animals, children, and monsters. As you can see here, this is a book about a horrible, horrible adult, and it's called The Twits. Oh dear, they were extremely horrible, the Twits were. Mr. and Mrs. Twits were disgusting, absolutely disgusting, very smelly, and very horrible indeed. But I'm not going to give you much of the story because I think you need to read the story for yourself. It's a good idea. Roald Dahl Part 2. My lovely students, the next book is Fantastic Mr. Fox. This book is about a wonderful fox. Now, I don't know if you want to think that the fox is naughty, or is it the three men that are naughty? But it's a very interesting book. The fox is very, very, very cheeky indeed. The next one we have is Danny, the Champion of the World. It's about a boy who goes on an adventure and has a very interesting adventure. Very exciting indeed. Again, I'm not going to tell you much about it because otherwise you will not read it. The next one we have is Roald Dahl, The Giraffe and the Pelly and Me. Again, it tells you what the book is about. Again, it's really interesting about the giraffe and a monkey and, of course, Billy the Boy. That's really, really interesting book again. Then we have the George's Marvelous Medicine. Again, this is a really interesting book, and how George has a very special medicine and what happens because of the medicine as well. Again, James and the Giant Peach. It's about a peach, James, and how he manages to go inside the peach, and then the adventures he has because of the peach and all the different creatures he meets. Very interesting. Then we have an extension of, I think, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, where it is Charlie and the Great Glass Elevator. I think it's a good book to read after you've read Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, because it will help you to understand this book better after Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory is just here. This is my most favorite of all. This is all about chocolate. So if you like chocolate, you must read this book because it's a very interesting book. It's about a boy named Charlie who wins a golden ticket to go into the Willy Wonka's chocolate factory and all the different adventures that he has. Again, a very, very good book that you must read. Oh, the BFG. This is about a giant and the little girl named Sophie meets a giant, and how they go on an adventure and how they enjoy themselves. And it's a really, really interesting book. Then we have The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar, and obviously there are more stories in there as well. These are short stories about different different books in one book. So again, you can have a read. We had a little chat about this one before going solo. This is about Roald Dahl and when he worked in the Royal Air Force and his adventures about the Air Force. Again, different countries that he visits and how he enjoyed his time as a young man. And of course, The Witches. We've already talked about The Witches as well. That's again a really interesting book, and it's all about the witches and how ladies turn into witches, how women turn into witches. So this brings us to the end of our Roald Dahl fantastic book, and all about his books and what you should read. I hope you enjoy reading them, and I will see you soon. Allah Hafiz.